At the age of 60, Keanu Reeves fractured his kneecap while filming John Wick, yet returned 3 days later. He has been victimized by theft, impersonated by AI fraudsters, and has expended $50,000 monthly to safeguard admirers from counterfeit profiles utilizing his likeness. In 2025, he commenced performances on Broadway, presenting 8 acts weekly, with considerable difficulty in ambulation. Critics deemed him exceptional, however, behind the scenes, an alternative reality was unfolding. After years of concealing suffering, undergoing operations, and experiencing loss, Keanu finally addressed what lies next. This does not constitute retirement. It is an unforeseen occurrence that has left Hollywood at a loss for an appropriate response. Keanu Reeves was born on September 2, 1964, in Beirut. His father, Samuel, was of Hawaiian Chinese descent, while his mother, Patricia, was British. Samuel was 21 and Patricia was 19 when they encountered each other in Beirut. Patricia was engaged in costume design. Samuel was oscillating between employment while already leading a tumultuous lifestyle. Keanu's name signifies a pleasant breeze over the mountains in Hawaiian. However, his formative years were far from tranquil. 3 weeks subsequent to Keanu's birth, the family relocated to Sydney. 1 year later, Samuel completely disappeared from their life. By the age of 3, Keanu was being raised solely by Patricia, who had relocated to New York. That marked the commencement of their perpetual relocation. Keanu's father was heavily involved in substance abuse at the time of his disappearance, however, Keanu continued to see him in Hawaii until he reached the age of 13. Their concluding meeting in 1977 was peculiar. They sat silently beneath the stars. The following day, Samuel transported him to the airport. That was all. He never encountered him again. Years later, when inquired about his father's whereabouts, Keanu remarked that it was as if the earth had consumed him. When Samuel was incarcerated, Keanu was unaware. The psychological harm was irrevocable. Patricia endeavored to establish a steady existence, but her romantic life rendered it tumultuous. In 1970, she wed Broadway director Paul Aaron. That duration was merely 1 year. In 1976, she wed rock promoter Robert Miller. They had a daughter named Karina. Subsequently, her fourth spouse, Jack Bond, a salon proprietor, entered her life. That concluded in 1994. Simultaneously, her involvement in the entertainment industry introduced other peculiar experiences into Keanu's formative years. They resided in proximity to Nimbus 9 Studio in Toronto. That is where rock stars arrived and departed. Alice Cooper once babysat him. He encountered Emmylou Harris. He also encountered Dolly Parton. However, none of that provided him with a sense of stability. By the age of 17, Keanu had attended 4 distinct high schools. He was expelled from the Etobicoke School of the Arts for excessive disruption. At De La Salle College, he assumed the role of a hockey goaltender and acquired the moniker The Wall. However, his dyslexia rendered academic pursuits challenging. Reading posed a challenge. He expressed that he consistently felt like an outsider. At Avondale, his final institution, he relinquished all effort. He did not obtain a high school diploma. He withdrew from his studies and pursued a career in acting instead. In 1992, when Keanu was rising to prominence, his father was apprehended in Hawaii for attempting to sell heroin. He possessed substantial quantities of cocaine as well. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison but served only 2. The guards treated him favorably because of Keanu's notoriety. He obtained his GED while incarcerated. At one point, an individual informed him that Keanu had perished in an accident, prompting him to succumb to tears. Nevertheless, he never made contact. Keanu ceased all communication with him thereafter. Samuel passed away in 2018. Continuously alienated. At the age of 15, Keanu was struggling to maintain academic stability. His dyslexia rendered him disoriented in class, prompting him to frequently feign comprehension. He was expelled for his boisterous and impulsive behavior. At Avondale, he was unable to maintain pace. He stated that due to my difficulties with reading, I was not an exemplary student. He commenced acting solely for survival. Feigning was no longer confined to the theater. It became into a lifestyle. During his adolescence, hockey served as his refuge. He was an exceptional goalkeeper. He contemplated the possibility of pursuing a professional career, and even competing in the Olympics. However, he fractured his ankle in a severe accident. He stated that he could observe the bone in such manner. His aspiration concluded. Having no alternative options, he resorted to acting. In 1984, Keanu secured his inaugural television role in a Canadian series titled Hanjin In. He portrayed a distressed adolescent. Interestingly, he was genuinely a troubled adolescent in reality. He was contending with fear and loneliness due to the many relocations, the presence of stepfathers, and the ensuing instability. He engaged in hockey with buddies to alleviate his anxiety. That year, he secured a theatrical role in an unusual play titled Wolfboy in Toronto. It was contentious and fervent. His performance was unrefined, tangible, and indelible. Certain scenes attained local legendary status. This marked the moment he began to get recognition. In 1985, he drove to Hollywood in pursuit of acting aspirations. However, agents informed him that his name was excessively foreign. They desired him to modify it to a more American name, such as Casey or Chuck. He temporarily adopted the name Keanu Reeves. Ultimately, he declined. He expressed that concealing his identity felt inappropriate. That decision influenced his trajectory. His emergence occurred in 1986 with the film River's Edge. The character he portrayed confronted the murder of a companion. The narrative was grounded in an actual criminal incident. Keanu did not merely perform, he experienced it. It evoked memories of the emotional detachment and anguish he harbored within. In 1989, he was selected for a role in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. He initially auditioned for the role of Bill, but the director reassigned him to Ted. Due to the rapport with co-star Alex Winter, they extensively improvised numerous scenarios. The script was initially composed on napkins. No one anticipated it would achieve cult status. Subsequently, Point Break was released in 1991. Keanu underwent months of training to master surfing. He almost drowned multiple times. He also trained with FBI agents and QB coaches. He devoted himself entirely to that role. Subsequent to the film, he continued to engage in surfing as a lifelong pursuit. In 1986, he directed Young Blood, a hockey film with Rob Lowe and Patrick Swayze. He resumed his role as a goalkeeper. He performed all of his own stunts. Pucks were traveling at 90 miles per hour. He performed without a stunt double. The film demonstrated his seriousness. He would jeopardize anything for the narrative. During the filming of Speed in 1994, Keanu Reeves declined the use of a stunt double for his role. He ultimately performed around 90% of all the perilous scenes alone. One of the most indelible experiences occurred when the bus had to leap across a chasm on the roadway. However, during one of those performances, an error occurred. The bus malfunctioned and propelled him approximately 20 feet into the air. He struck the ground forcefully, fractured 2 ribs, and sustained a concussion. He refrained from informing the director to prevent the cessation of filming. He persisted relentlessly. The situation deteriorated as they filmed on an actual freeway near San Diego. The cast was not informed that real vehicles will be utilized that day. Unexpectedly, the bus began colliding with actual vehicles. Keanu stated that the individuals on board yelled in genuine terror due to the element of surprise. Nevertheless, he persevered. Upon its theatrical release, Speed generated $350 million globally, despite a production budget of approximately $30 million. The film transformed him into a genuine action star. However, behind the scenes, it almost shattered him. Subsequently, an astonishing event transpired. Following the immense success of Speed, Warner Bros. extended a $75 million offer to Keanu. It encompassed back-end revenues and merchandising rights. However, he declined without so much as a blink. It was not a matter of finances, he merely sought to avoid subjugation. He prioritized fidelity to the task over financial compensation. Subsequently, in 1997, he declined an offer of $11 million for Speed 2. To assume a position in The Devil's Advocate, a film that provided him an opportunity to reveal a different facet of his persona. His agency deemed it career suicide, yet Keanu prioritized moral conviction over pragmatic considerations. To secure Al Pacino's participation in The Devil's Advocate, he consented to a substantial reduction in his salary. He merely desired the narrative to succeed. His prior endeavor with Shakespeare in the 1993 film Much Ado About Nothing was unsuccessful. Critics stated that his performance was rigid and strange. He grappled with the lines. However, there was some aspect that the reviewers were unaware of. Keanu experienced dyslexia. Emma Thompson, his co-star, also did. The two remained awake late after extensive shooting, assisting one another in reading and comprehending the intricate text. She assisted him in mastering the delivery of those phrases. Their friendship strengthened as they both comprehended the difficulties involved. The film may have publicly humiliated him, yet privately, it imparted the lesson of perseverance despite feelings of inadequacy. Subsequently, Johnny Mnemonic was released in 1995, and all conceivable misfortunes transpired. The film commenced with a budget of $26 million, but, following the success of Speed, Sony endeavored to transform it into a blockbuster. Keanu engaged in conflict with the director about many aspects, from casting to action sequences. He departed off the set on 2 occasions. The filmmaker then denounced the entire project as corrupt, noting that the film was intended to be a modest and intelligent adaptation of William Gibson's cyberpunk narrative, but it was distorted into something quite different. They over their budget significantly, and the end product did not align with anyone's expectations. It incurred a global loss of about $100 million. Keanu subsequently acknowledged that his ambitious aspirations about the utilization of modern technology in the film were not feasible in practice. Upon its release in 1997, The Devil's Advocate was recognized for its newfound profundity in Keanu's performance. What many were unaware of was that he was drawing from genuine suffering. Keanu's father abandoned him when he was little 3 years old. The most recent occasion he encountered him was at the age of 13, during a visit to Hawaii. They observed the nocturnal sky together, and the following morning, his father had vanished. Absent of police involvement or hospital documentation, simply vanished. Keanu bore that anguish for years. In The Devil's Advocate, he infused his anguish into each scene alongside Al Pacino, who portrayed a malevolent paternal figure. Acting instructors observed the profound depth of Keanu's emotional engagement, yet he remained reticent on the subject. He dismissed the praise as mere flattery, as if he were reluctant to accept the accolades. Subsequently, The Matrix was released. In 1998, few weeks prior to the commencement of production, Keanu underwent emergency spinal surgery. The damage accumulated over years due to motorbike accidents and sports injuries. He was unable to walk correctly, although he remained silent. Continued with training. Utilized a neck brace beneath his attire when practicing the combat choreography. Some of his rigidity in the film was not a performance. It was the agony. The team had to modify the filming schedule to accommodate his recovery, although he never disclosed the severity of his condition to the studio. He feared they may supplant him. The release of The Matrix in 1999 irrevocably transformed film. The bullet time effect attained legendary status. The film had a production budget of $63 million, and Keanu received an advance payment of $10 million. What did he do next? Astonished everybody. Donated a substantial portion of his income. He distributed his gains among the special effects crew and stunt squad, awarding several individuals bonuses approximately valued at $1 million apiece. Studio executives deemed it irrational, however, he remained indifferent. He desired that those working behind the scenes have recognition like to that of the stars. Following the trilogy's revenue of $1.8 billion, Keanu discovered that Warner Brothers had manipulated the figures. They were underreporting profits to evade compensating him for what he was entitled to. In 2001, he initiated a lawsuit. He asserted that the studio employed dubious accounting practices to withhold approximately $100 million in residuals. They discreetly reached an out-of-court settlement, and Keanu incorporated provisions to safeguard his future agreements. However, the entire situation rendered him increasingly detached from the commercial aspects of Hollywood. He preferred to negotiate rather than engage in conflict over financial matters. In The Matrix Reloaded, released in 2002, Keanu exerted his physical capabilities once more. The pinnacle was a 14-minute pursuit sequence on the freeway. A complete freeway was constructed exclusively for the filming. He performed most of the stunts himself, occasionally exceeding 85 in Pantin Tercer. A scene featured a 180-foot automobile flip. He departed from it, albeit not unscathed. The whiplash was severe. He required therapy and endured neck pain for several years. For a brief period, he contemplated employing stunt doubles in Matrix Revolutions, but ultimately refrained from doing so. During this time, his sister Kim was battling for her survival. She was diagnosed with leukemia. She received her diagnosis in 1991, and for a decade, Keanu remained by her side. He divested his property to reside nearer to her. He expended $5 million on therapies. Subsequently, once The Matrix generated substantial profits for him, he contributed over $31 million to cancer research. He refrained from associating his name with any of it. He established a private foundation that continued to provide support. It was unknown to all until a discreet interview in 2009. Never openly addressed the matter. Keanu Reeves endured a challenge that would have caused most actors to abandon their careers. During the filming of Constantine in 2005, he aimed to portray a genuine, fatigued exorcist. This necessitated the use of substantial makeup daily. However, the chemicals in it caused burns on his skin. The situation deteriorated significantly. His face and neck were adorned with red welts and blisters. Medical professionals advised him to cease. He disregarded the information. He declined to utilize a body double for the fire scenes. Flames seared his skin and exacerbated the situation, yet he persevered. He continued to smoke actual cigarettes on set to maintain his character, despite the fact that it hindered his recovery. The filming had to be halted multiple times for him to recuperate, resulting in an additional cost of $2 million to the production, in addition to its $100 million budget. However, what caused him the greatest pain did not occur on a film set. On December 24, 1999, shortly before the release of The Matrix, Keanu's reality disintegrated. He and his partner, Jennifer Syme, were anticipating the arrival of a child. They had already selected a name, Ava. However, on Christmas Eve, Ava was stillborn at 8 months gestation. No prior warning had been issued. Jennifer had been entirely healthy. The nursery was prepared. The news devastated them. Jennifer experienced a severe emotional collapse. Required immediate assistance. Keanu vanished from the public sphere for over a year. He declined multiple film offers, including those that would have compensated him $20 million. The partnership could not endure the suffering. They cherished one another, however, sorrow dominated all aspects. In a matter of weeks, they had become estranged. Then arrived the time that concluded his remaining recuperation. On April 2, 2001, shortly after 6 o'clock in the morning, Jennifer perished in an automobile accident. Her Jeep collided with stationary vehicles on Cahuenga Boulevard in Los Angeles, the same thoroughfare where Keanu had previously filmed high-speed sequences for Speed. She was not utilizing a seatbelt. The cops discovered 2 rolled-up bills containing white substance, along with medicines for back pain from a previous incident. Nearly 1 day prior, on April 1, she and Keanu had been in San Francisco together. They consumed brunch. They conversed. They had re-established their connection. That marked their final day. When Keanu contacted the coroner's office inquiring about Jennifer Syme's presence, he was previously aware of the response. Nevertheless, he inquired regardless. That was the day he disappeared emotionally. In 2006, he featured in his Scanner Darkly, an unconventional animated picture characterized by a dreamlike aesthetic. He portrayed a man succumbing to the loss of his identity and sanity due to a narcotic. It transcended mere performance, it was his essence. He infused it with his genuine anguish. He even spoke lines that were not included in the screenplay. He spoke of losing everything, and it felt profoundly real. The filmmakers subsequently stated that such passages were so visceral that they transformed the entire film. The film ultimately depicted individuals who had endured significant suffering, and Keanu recognized this in Jennifer. The animation style corresponded with his mental state. Trapped between two realms, not fully belonging to either. Subsequently, in 2008, The Day the Earth Stood Still was released. It failed spectacularly. Decomposed Tomatoes assigned it a score of 21%. The whole expenditure, including marketing, amounted to $245 million, yet, despite generating $233 million in revenue, it resulted in a financial loss. Critics asserted that Keanu appeared vacant in the part, nevertheless, they were unaware that he experienced similar feelings in reality. He failed to appear for the film promotion. He portrayed an extraterrestrial who lacked comprehension of humanity, reflecting his own sense of alienation and disconnection. In 2014, a transformation occurred. He agreed to participate in John Wick. At the age of 50, he exerted himself more than ever before. He underwent 3 months of continuous training, acquiring skills in jiu-jitsu, firearms combat, and a fictional martial art known as gun kata. While filming, he fractured his left hand by striking a stuntman, however he continued without interruption. He instructed the technicians to reattach his hand with adhesive between takes. Absence of a hospital equates to no respite. He persisted relentlessly. The film incurred a production cost of approximately $30 million and generated $86 million in global revenue. That salvaged his action career. Despite his contributions to directing the action sequences and developing the character, he relinquished his credit to the writer. He was indifferent to assuming authority. He merely desired the narrative to succeed. Subsequently, John Wick, Chapter 2 was released. The pencil scene, which is widely recalled, was arduous to film. It appeared on TV for about 45 seconds, although was filmed for a duration of 14 hours across 2 days. Keanu dislocated his shoulder while performing the maneuvers. He underwent surgery. Returned to work 3 days later. The pencils were not merely props. They possessed metallic cores to produce authentic sounds upon impact. That little scene pulled all from him. By 2019, for Chapter 3, Parabellum, he engaged in training for 10 hours daily for a period of 6 months. He reduced his weight by 20 pounds to maintain mental acuity. However, during a motorcycle practice on the Brooklyn Bridge, he collided. His patella fractured. He required immediate surgery. Nevertheless, he persisted in performing actual feats subsequently. Similar to shattering gravestones in a burial ground. They provided him with a bespoke $15,000 knee brace to facilitate his mobility. Despite certain situations requiring CGI, he continued to perform all other aspects authentically. Subsequently, Chapter 4 was released in 2023. At the age of 58, he executed the most perilous scenario of his life. He traversed Berlin on horseback, in close proximity to the Brandenburg Gate. During the shot, the horse became agitated and bolted uncontrollably. It narrowly missed Keanu. The location where he stood bore hoof prints in the concrete. He sustained a concussion and contusions to his ribs. However, he resumed his activities on the same day. No one instructed him to do so. He accomplished it. The chase was videotaped 47 times over a span of 3 weeks. He trained alongside Olympic riders to perfect his skills. When Keanu Reeves saw River Phoenix in 1991 during the production of My Own Private Idaho, a transformation occurred. They were not merely performing. They embodied those roles. They engaged with actual street workers and experimented with drugs to comprehend the character's suffering. Keanu's friendship with him became so profound that he rode his motorcycle 1,300 miles from Toronto to Rivers' family ranch in Florida solely to invite him to participate in the film. He was that type of friend. However, it was ephemeral. On October 30, 1993, River Phoenix entered the Viper Room accompanied by his fiancée Samantha Mathis and his siblings Joaquin and Rain. He had a beverage containing both cocaine and heroin, provided to him by guitarist John Frusciante. Shortly thereafter, River slumped on the pavement outside the club. He began experiencing convulsions immediately on the ground. At 1:51 a.m., shortly after midnight on Halloween, he had departed. Cedars-Sinai Medical Center was unable to save him. He was merely 23 years old. That shattered Keanu in a manner that words cannot explain. Subsequently, he permanently abandoned illicit substances. He had a total transformation. Years later, Keanu discovered tranquil love once more, however he refrained from disclosing it to the public. He and artist Alexandra Grant concealed their relationship for several months before publicly appearing together, hand in hand, at a red carpet event in 2019. He was 55 years old. She was 51 years old. They initially encountered each other in 2011 while collaborating on a modest publication. The book, Ode to Happiness, contained his prose and her illustrations. Their connection gradually intensified over the years. Individuals in their vicinity observed that her artwork had acquired a more exuberant quality. By early 2019, they were already in a relationship, maintaining privacy. In February 2025, Keanu stated that she now rides motorcycles with him and enjoys it. This was his inaugural significant public relationship. Due to all that he had forfeited, Keanu had acquired the skill of maintaining confidentiality. In 1999, he experienced a significant spinal issue. He was gradually losing sensation in his legs due to a herniated disc and spinal stenosis. He concealed it from all. He donned a neck brace while training in Kung Fu for The Matrix. He did not inform the directors. He feared he might forfeit the position. Physicians inserted a metallic plate in his cervical region. However, he was still instructed to mobilize immediately post-surgery. He continued practicing and persevering, despite being on the verge of paralysis. In 2013, he required more surgery. The discomfort persisted, although he refrained from expressing any grievances. All of this transpired when his sister Kim was battling leukemia. She received her diagnosis in 1991, the same year he encountered River. Over the subsequent decade, Keanu evolved into more than only an actor. He disposed of his residence. He expended $5 million on her medical treatment. When the pain became unbearable for her, she stated that Keanu would simply sit and hold her hand. She referred to him as her protector, the individual who kept the malevolent figure at bay. Upon earning $45 million from The Matrix, he donated 70% of that amount, $31.5 million, pertaining to cancer research. He postponed film shoots to remain by Kim's side. She overcame cancer in 2001, although Keanu continued to discreetly finance research. He consistently refrained from having his name associated with anything. He continued beyond that point. In 2020, during the global shutdown due to COVID-19, Keanu visited food banks in Los Angeles, donning a disguise to avoid recognition. He provided meals, assisted with supplies, and remained silent about it. He previously established a private charity that supports children and cancer research. Since the mid-2000s, he once informed a publication that he preferred not to associate his name with it. He merely sought to assist. Throughout the lockdowns, he contributed millions across the United States and Canada, unbeknownst to anyone. Upon his return to The Matrix in 2021 for Resurrections, challenges persisted. At 57, he was still recuperating from previous procedures. The script continued to evolve. He had to reacquire his kung fu skills. He disagreed with the director's novel approach. Nearly 50% of Neo's dialogue was altered by Keanu Reeves himself. The film ceased production in March 2020 due to COVID and resumed in August. However, by that time, circumstances had evolved. The $190 million film generated only $160.2 million in revenue. It performed poorly. Keanu was correct, although the harm had already occurred. His professional rapport with the director remained unrecovered. Subsequently, an unforeseen event occurred. In Sonic the Hedgehog 3, published in December 2024, Keanu Reeves provided the voice for Shadow. He was 60 years of age. This was his inaugural significant voice role. He recorded 200 lines in complete isolation due to health and safety regulations. He employed the identical intense tone he utilized in John Wick. The filmmaker was astonished by its impeccable sound quality. His voice contributed to the film's worldwide success. It generated $725.2 million globally. However, not all developments were positive. In December 2023, 6 of Keanu's valuable watches were pilfered from his residence in Hollywood Hills. The criminals incapacitated the security system and accessed the premises via a window. One timepiece was a $9,500 Rolex inscribed with JW4, a personal gift he presented to his John Wick 4 stunt squad. That was the most painful. In July 2025, the police in Chile subsequently retrieved the watches. During a raid on an international criminal organization, Keanu provided testimony remotely. The entire experience felt like an infringement, even for an individual who consistently maintains solitude. In 2025, an entirely distinct occurrence transpired. Keanu made his inaugural appearance on a Broadway stage. On September 13, he commenced his performance in Waiting for Godot at the age of 60. 8 performances weekly. He experienced discomfort, particularly in his knees due to years of performing stunts. Nevertheless, he persisted. The performance was successful. It generated $1.8 million weekly. He had undergone training in clowning and specialized movements specifically for the job. Critics asserted that he was exceptional. He described it as the most challenging endeavor he had ever undertaken. The theater was at capacity each evening. In the background, a more sinister occurrence was transpiring. Keanu was being replicated by artificial intelligence and deepface technology. Numerous fraudulent profiles were utilizing his likeness for romantic frauds. Individuals were being deceived. A woman lost $160,000 under the impression that she was assisting him with legal issues. Another woman ultimately resided in her vehicle. In 2024, more than 40,000 fraudulent accounts were eliminated. Keanu currently expends $50,000 each month via a security firm named Lodi, just to ensure the safety of his admirers. His history caused him concern. At the onset of his profession, an individual surreptitiously superimposed a tear over his visage without his knowledge. Subsequently, he incorporated a stipulation in each contract prohibiting any digital alteration of his visage or performance. Only minor adjustments, such as eliminating blinks, were permitted. He remarked that losing control of one's image results in the loss of a portion of oneself, regardless of the circumstances. He remains modest. He once stated, "Endeavor to avoid failure." That constitutes his entire ideology. He asserted that he is indifferent to wealth, claiming he could subsist for generations on his current resources. Lionsgate confirmed the production of John Wick 5 in 2025. He expressed his willingness to participate in a fourth Bill and Ted film. During his tenure on Broadway, an individual inquired whether he would undertake the endeavor once more. He merely smiled and affirmed, yes, and yes. He was born in Beirut, relocated to Canada, and suffered the loss of his infant daughter. Lost River nearly lost his sister, yet he persevered. He continues to train. He continues to operate motorcycles. He continues to behave as though he is merely commencing. He received the Inkpot Award in 2024. He received the Lance Reddick Legacy Award in tribute to his deceased friend. He continues to distribute film proceeds among crew personnel to ensure their employment. He is now 60 years old, yet he remains undiminished in his vigor.